Welcome back. In this video, I'm going to record about what is activity duration estimation, estimating activity durations. So we will look in detail in this video, how are we going to estimate activities. We'll look into different tools and techniques of estimating, uh, tools like one-point estimation, three-point estimation, analogous estimation, beta estimation, right? And then ranges. I'll also take the dream house project. We have got the activities listed already. We have some one-point estimates on them. We'll try to reach up till the beta and the weighted estimations using that particular example. So hang on in this video. I'll cover many important concepts on the examination. Many important tools and techniques which will be you will be seeing on the examination are covered in this particular video for your PMP examination. Let's get started off and try to understand more about estimating activity durations for PMP examination. Let me share my screen. Okay. So estimating activity durations. So estimating activity durations is the next activity we have after defining and sequencing of activities. Now we want to estimate how much time it is going to take to do the work. So topics that are covered in this video is inputs to the estimating activity durations, how is estimating done, types of estimating, one point analogous, parametric, what is the difference between these particular estimation techniques. We'll cover about that. We'll also try to see if there's some keywords which you want to bring forward so that you can easily pin the answer in the examination. Then we have got agile estimation and decision making technique and the outputs of scheduling. So for the next 15-20 minutes, we'll try to understand estimating activity durations in detail. Okay, estimate activity durations. We already have the activities with us: planning, foundation, pillars, walls, roof for a dream house project, electrical wiring, plumbing framework, all these things. So what are the durations? We have got 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and again we have got like 2 weeks for the pillars, and then it's going to be 2 weeks for the walls, 1 week for the roof, 1 week for electrical wiring, 2 weeks, plumbing framework 2 weeks, cementing the wall 2 weeks, flooring 2 weeks, woodwork 4 weeks, and finally the interiors for 4 weeks. So that's the kind of estimates we have. Now, how do we put this on a plan and how do we get a high level idea like when is the project going to get completed? Let's see about that. So how long will it take to complete each activity? So for each activity, if you have to take an estimation, the first and foremost important thing is it is always good and it's better if the person doing the work gives you the estimate. Okay, you as a project manager don't just sit and put on these numbers. Work with the people who are going to give work on this particular task or activity and take the estimates from these people. So those are more better estimates. So are more accurate. Those are estimates are more accurate. Okay, so work with the people who are going to work. If you are on IT projects, work with the developers to come and give you the estimates. Work with the testers to give you the estimates. Right? You just don't go and sit and put numbers and it will fall in the trap of padding up things. Okay, we'll look into that. So what is needed to do the estimate activity durations? As I told you, the list of things we're going to do. So the big list we have got attributes of those activities, assumption logs, what is been assumed to be built, lesson learned register for any historical information, resource breakdown structure, who will be working on what, because if you've got a better resource, you'll do the work in lesser time. If you've got a naive resource, it will take more time to do. And resource requirements, what all resources are needed for developing the project. Then project assignment, team assignments, who will be working on this, resource calendars and risk registers. Okay, risk registers to talk about contingencies and their other reserves. So these things are needed to do the estimate activity durations. So let's see how do we start doing it. So how do we estimate? So one of the tools and technique we use is called as the expert judgment. So experts could come and say, okay, the last 4 5 projects we have worked in a similar way. So it's going to take the same time, approximately the same time. That's one way of this. Sometimes you people who don't have an idea just come and guess, or they give guts, or they do give it's like 4 weeks. Let's do it like double it of 8 weeks. And padding. Padding is like just adding extra weeks after the actual estimate you think is going to take, right? So after your forecast, you just add extra weeks. So that's not recommended. So of all these techniques, expert judgment seems to be the closest ones. Other things is not that reliable from the way we're going to estimate. So we'll take expert judgment and these then see what are the other tools and techniques we have. Okay. Now, let's try to understand what is the role of project manager estimating. So first and the foremost thing, project manager needs to ensure the team has the relevant information when they're trying to do estimating. Especially on IT projects, we should ensure that we have the entire information on the user story, the acceptance criteria, right, the test cases, and everything is available so that the definition of ready is there for the particular story to get started off. Then get the people to who will work on this to do the estimates. That's important. That's so the job of the project manager to get the people, the right people to do the estimates for us, and then do the sanity on estimates. Just ensure that people are just bluffing things, putting extra time just to kind of save themselves. So you have to kind of do the sanity of estimates, work with other experts to find out if these estimates are reasonable. Then we have to prevent padding. We have the project manager needs to just see, go and see, are people just adding extra days? So that's another important role for a project manager to prevent padding. Then check on reserves. Are there any contingency reserve for the project or any management reserves? Can we reach out to management in case of any issues? So this is the role of the project manager estimating. Let's try to understand more about this. So now let's see what are the different estimating techniques we have. Okay. So what are the different estimating techniques? First one is the 1 point estimating technique. So this is done based on the expert judgments and the historical information we have. Okay, expert will say, okay, this is how we did in the last 4 or 5 projects. This is how, like for example, I was working on one of the product companies wherein we were doing a launch. Okay, it was a very simple launch. We had done like 2, 3 similar launches. So when the new requirement came in, okay, fine, it's just talking about visibility of the users, the hierarchy, and then about the reporting cycle. So then this can be done like next 4 weeks. So that's an expert judgment because we've done like 3 or 4 projects similar, so we could give an expert estimate just like that. So again, we are working on the historical information, and expert judgment is based on the historical information. So 1 point estimate is done by expert judgment and on historical information. Remember that. So since just 1 point estimate is so simple, like for example, here we've got all the activities and we've got so many 1 point estimates. Planning has got 2 weeks, 3 weeks. For examination, for the network diagram, the procedural diagrams and all, we will assume that it is a 1 point estimate. Okay, and then we build all of this. Okay, so we've got like 2 weeks of pillars, 2 weeks of walls, all these things over. So all these are 1 point estimates we have. Okay, so 1 point duration gives you 1 point estimate. So for project durations, we take 1 point estimates. Okay, now what is the advantage of the 1 point estimating? You can do the estimation very fast. Okay, in case if you are supposed to do the estimation fast, then we take 1 point estimating. But again, there are a lot of cons of this, right? This is not the best way to do it. You might have people doing some padding, right? No information on risk and uncertainties is available on this, because we are going to talk about risk and uncertainties and other ways of estimating. Decreases buy-in as people think that it has padding, so people are thinking, okay, they just added up into the less buying from people. And also, let's say you give an estimate of you're going to do some task in say 10 days and you finish the task in say 5 days, and then there's going to be less credibility. People think, okay, why did they give 10 days initially? Right? So these are the cons, but if you have to give fast and quick estimates, this is the one which we'll be relying on. Okay, so that's the 1 point estimating for fast estimates. Then next comes this analogous estimating. Analogous estimating is estimating done based on historical information. Okay, 1 point estimate is just for the expert judgment and historical. Analogous is like more of the historical information for time, cost, and resources. So all of these have got the estimating to be done. So you can do based on the old projects, you give the estimation over here. So analogous estimation also has got the expert judgment and the historical information. So parametric is estimating is like, so one of the meters you have got estimation based on 2 variables. Okay, so there is a mathematical model. So the keyword for parametric estimating is mathematical model with historic data. Okay, again I'll repeat, the keyword over here is mathematical model. So parameters, 2 parameters are there, x and y, right? So the mathematical model and historical data. For example, we can do 100 lines of code in say 2 days, we can write, for example, or we can kind of uncover defect density as like for every 100 hours of coding, 5% defects are okay, right? So there's a lot of parameters are there, right? So this is like a parameter, the mathematical model, again based on the historical data we have built this. So relation between the historical data and the other variable is what is called as parametric estimating. In analogous estimating, we're not looking for any relationship, we just an expert judgment is comes in, but in parametric estimation, like 2 variables are there and there is a relation between the 2 variables. Clear? Let's go ahead. So parametric estimation has got many more types. It's like one of them is called regression analysis. Regression analysis is also called a scatter diagram, wherein we want to see the relation between 2 variables. Like for example, As I told you, 100 lines of code can be done in, let's say, 8 hours. That's a relationship. Or if you're going to paint the entire wall of 10 square feet, it takes 1 hour to write, right? So those are the kind of things we're talking about over here. Then you have got the learning curve. Learning curve is like the amount of time it takes to do an activity the first time to the 100th time. The 100th time will have the activity done faster because you have learned things, right? It's not necessarily 100 times. It could be even you could get the hold of an activity after, let's say, 10 times also. So that's the learning curve. That also helps you. The next thing is heuristic. Heuristic talks about the Pareto principle kind of things like 80-20 rule, right? So for example, you can address the top 20% of things that's going to be 80% of the results. Okay. Then finally, another way of parametric estimating is like the 3-point estimating. 3-point estimating over 3 estimates: optimistic, pessimistic, and most likely, right? So these are the 3 estimates you get, and you take an average of that. So we'll see about that in detail in the next few slides. Okay. Now, in 3-point estimation, you have got triangular distribution, also called as simple averages, wherein you take the most likely estimate M, the pessimistic estimate, the worst time is going to take, optimistic and the best time is going to get things done. Okay. So you take all of these three and divide it by 3. They get the simple average. Okay. So like, for example, we have got the numbers in front of us. So we have got planning 2 days, foundation 3 days, 3 weeks. All the numbers over here are in weeks. Okay. Pillars, walls, roof, critical, all this thing, right? So these are the 1-point estimates. Now, what we see here is next comes the let's see what is the critical path on the 1-point estimates we have. So we've got the critical path, I think I've told you, is our activities like planning, foundation, pillars, wall, roof, and then let me take a highlighter and show it to you. Uh, okay, so we've got planning, foundation, pillars, walls, roof, and then cementing of the walls, then woodwork, and then finally the interiors. So all of this duration is going to take you like 20 weeks. So that's the total duration of the, that's the longest duration of the path called critical path duration. So this is the 1-point estimate we have. Now let's see what happens when you go to do a 3-point estimate. Okay. So other paths are also there. Like for example, planning, foundation, pillars, walls, roof, electrical, flooring, and then interiors. This is going to take you like 18 weeks. Again, this path is also the next path: planning, foundation, pillars, walls, roof, plumbing, flooring, and it is going to again 18 weeks, right? The longest path is the path with the cementing of the walls, woodwork, and interiors. It's going to take 20 weeks. So that's your critical path. The longest path in the project with the buffer is 0 is called critical path. Okay. So this is the 1-point estimate we have for the critical path. Now let's see what happens when we go to the 3-point estimation. Okay. Okay. Now, in the 3-point estimations, we are again having, we are having, let me just make this more visible. Okay, let me again share back my screen. I just, okay, if you can see it now, so you've got the 3 estimates. We have got now, got a 3-point estimating from the 1 point, which was in the previous slide, right? Previous slide, we had just 1-point estimate, a critical path was like 20 weeks. And now we have got a 3-point estimate, and let's see how it goes. So in the 3-point estimate, we have got the same, most likely is the same old 1-point estimates we had, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and all those things. And then we have got the optimistic, for example, planning. The most optimistic estimate is that we can finish the planning in 1 week. But the most likely is over 2 weeks, and then for pessimistic, it was like for 3 weeks, right? So these are the kind of estimates we have put in front of us. Okay. 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 So planning foundation. So foundation, I've got to put optimistic as like 2 weeks because a 3-week estimate initially. Now, pessimistic is 5 weeks. We are assuming like there could be some rains. Okay. So the worst case is like 5 weeks is a pessimistic thing. We have to finish the foundation. Okay. Similarly, pillars optimistic 1 week, pessimistic like 3 weeks, right? So all these estimates are given based on some constraints and assumptions that are being placed. So then, for example, roof, we are trying to lay the roof in 1 week is the most likely estimate. But the pessimist is at 2 weeks. Maybe something could get delayed. Maybe there's a rain or something. Optimistic, like you just finish off this in 2-3 days and close it off. Okay. And similarly, electrical cementing. Now, What I want you to observe is, I want you to observe the ones you highlighted in orange color: planning, foundation, pillars, wall, roof, followed by cementing, and then after the woodwork and interiors, right? So these were the activities on the critical path. Okay. Now we can find the overall parametric estimate of 3-point estimation for the entire project. We could do it for activities also. Okay. For entire project, we take the total critical path and then we find this divided by these things. Okay. Let's see how it is. For every activity, you've got 1 plus 3 plus 2 divided by 3. That's going to be like 6 by 2 is going to be again 2, right? We're going to see that in the next slide. Okay. Now, so now a 3-point estimation you have got for these activities. Okay. So once had an orange color, the critical path is 23.8 days. Okay. We have put the formula optimistic plus pessimistic plus most likely divided by 3. So after putting the entire formula, we have got these estimates like 23.8 days. Okay. Now you see how the critical path moved from 20 days for the 1-point estimate. Now it's become like 23.8 days. So the probability of doing this more is much better. The risk is lesser because you've taken care into some assumptions and some constraints and come up with these estimates. Okay. That's the beauty of like 3-point estimation. Okay. So overall project can be completed with like 23.8 weeks. Okay. So that's on the critical path for 3-point estimation. Now let's go a little bit ahead. Now talk about beta distribution. In beta distribution, we want is also called as weighted average. For examination, remember both the names. Beta distribution also called as weighted average, wherein we are giving more effort, more weight to the most likely item. Okay, so the formula becomes P plus O plus 4M by 6. Okay, remember the formula. These formulas you have to memorize all the 3 formulas for the triangular distribution, average mean, weighted distribution, beta distribution, and then the ranges and the standard deviation. So totally like 4 formulas, right? So now let's see, let's do the find the weighted average of beta estimating. So in the beta based estimating, now what is happening on the critical path? So the critical path is now even more weightage for the items, the values you see over here. Again, with critical path items, the total is been over here. So the final total critical path is coming to 22 weeks. See, from 20 weeks for 3-point estimation, it went to like 23.8 weeks. Now for beta estimation, when you're giving more weightage to the most likely part, it comes to like 22 weeks. Okay, so we're getting more closer to getting better estimates now. Okay, so that's the critical path we have. Now what happens in the next thing? Now we want to, what is the advantage of beta estimation, right? We have got a standard deviation. Now we can give a range also, right? Let's try to see what's the standard deviation now. Now standard deviation is P minus O by 6. Standard deviation, the greater the standard deviation, the higher the risk. Okay, so now if you put that in the previous formula over here in the table, now you see here though most likely, sorry, the pessimistic is 33 weeks. Okay, the optimistic is 17.5. Now you go and put this formula and subtract this, and what do we get? We get it over here, P minus O by 6, 33 minus 17.5 by 6, which is nothing but your 2.5 is the answer. Okay, that's the standard deviation we have. Okay, so standard deviation is 12.5. Now what is the advantage of standard deviation? Now I can give a range saying that the project can be completed in this higher range and lower range. Okay, let's see how do we do that in the next slide. Okay, if you go to the next slide, let's see here. Okay, so what's happening over here? Next slide. So beta distribution. So range is what? Beta distribution minus the standard deviation or plus or minus. Okay, so it's both plus and minus of the standard deviation. So let's see what happens to the range now. So the range now becomes, if we go and see over here, so range is now 22 was the critical path, minus 2.5 was the standard deviation, to 22 plus 2.5. That will become like 19.5 weeks to 24.5 weeks. This is the range of the project. The project could be completed between 19.5 weeks to 24.5 weeks. So the probability of doing the project in this is higher. Okay, that's how the critical path is being chosen, and then the beta distribution helps us, the weighted average. We use standard deviation and then give a range. So these are better estimates to ensure that we're going to complete the project in certain time. Okay, so that's the advantages of beta distribution. Okay, now let's go ahead. Next slide. So then another type of estimate is called bottom-up estimating. Bottom-up estimating, so you can estimate all the activities in the smallest level, the work packages or the task or the use stories, and then you go through the pictures or the epics. That's the bottom estimation. So it's like detailed estimates on all activities or work packages. Next thing is called affinity estimating. Affinity estimating, so the keyword over here is like grouping. Okay, grouping items in similar quantities and estimating those. Like for example, like story pointing, or you could also do estimates for like the front end UI or the back end thing or the config changes, right? So you're grouping and doing things. Okay, so it's called affinity estimates. Affinity is like you're like related, or like you're showing affinity towards being in a group. Okay, so that's the way you remember the keyword, right? So grouping items on the exam, you will see them talking about affinity estimating. Okay, if you're talking about relationship between two variables, it is the regression analysis of the scatter diagram. Remember these terms for your PMP examinations, very, very important. Okay, now there's another way of agile estimates called t-shirt sizing. T-shirt sizing is like giving your high level estimates of features, something like a rough order magnitude what we have in traditional thing. We have project management waterfall. In agile we have got t-shirt sizing where you give a very high level estimate of what is we're going to do. Okay, then just enough to map out the overall effort. Okay, this estimate is more than a person map out the overall, saying that you can complete it like 6 weeks or 8 weeks, we can say that. And then scores gained estimate saying that these estimates will be refined further as and when we work on the project. That's about t-shirt sizing. Okay, so t-shirt sizing, you've got a lot of categories. You've got extra small, small, medium, large, extra large, right? So extra large could be a very big feature, large could be a another smaller feature. Medium could be a user story that spans like 8 to 10 days. So a small story could span like 2 to 5 days. Extra small could be like a half a day's work. Okay, so this is the teacher signing categories we have in agile estimating that helps us. So we kind of do some relative estimation here using the story pointing also. Okay, then the next way of doing estimation is called planning poker. So planning poker, what we do is just try to understand this. Let's say, for example, there is a particular feature which you need to build for a backend logic. Okay, let's say you want to add all payments and calculate the EMI. Okay, so in this you have got say 4 developers and now you want to work on this logic. So in planning poker, what we do is we give cards of the story points to the developers, all the 4 developers, and then we describe the story. Once we describe the story, and then we tell people to whatever is their estimate of the story to put the card in upside down fashion, keep it down to the numbers below. The story point numbers will be in the Fibonacci series format: 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and 13. 13 we won't take much because like it goes to the next sprint also. We want to keep the work as much as possible in the sprint, right? So let's say 2 developers put say 8 story points, and one developer put say 5 story points, and another one to say 3 story points. Now once they have put these numbers, we turn the numbers, see these numbers 8, 5, 3, and 8, right? So now there will be a discussion. So people are asking like, why do you put 8 points? What is the justification, right? And then we're asking like, why do you think you can run like three story points? Is it a very senior developer who's doing it, or something has been? Or it's like, why do you do it in 5 points? So always we move towards the higher estimates and the majority. Okay, so then whoever is working with, let's say, will decide on 8 story point doing. So that's the advantage of planning poker. Okay, so the best part of planning poker is it's very collaborative, it is fast, this is efficient. Okay, we have got discussions, we have got unearthing things, we're getting more clarity, and it is very it is not biased, it's not, there's no padding in this. It is adaptive, right? So for example, let's say for example everybody puts say 3 people are putting say 5. Okay, and one person puts 8s. Okay, and people are not convinced why it should be 5, right? uh, like for example, then again we have one more voting, then we try to understand more. Okay, so then this is called adaptive way of working. It's anonymous. Since people are keeping the card reverse, we are not knowing like what exactly it is. So it's not biasing. Like let's say for example developer A puts 3, then everything, or he's put 3, I also put 3. Until unless they turn the card and show, nobody knows like what's the estimate from other person. So this gives us more efficient way of estimating. Okay, then we use the story point cards. Then it helps the team in reaching quick consensus and then start work immediately. That's the advantage of planning poker. Okay, so again, just to summarize, 4 people, 4 different estimate. We align with that estimate, which is more common and towards the larger estimate. Okay, and this is a anonymous estimate. The cards are always kept down. Then they have turned. This is all facilitations done with Scrum Master. to get the estimates from the development team. Clear? That's the planning poker for us. Now, few more tools is called data analysis tools we have got in to estimate the activity duration. So one is the alternate analysis. We are asking questions like what if or make or buy. Should we make it internally or should we buy a vendor? Should we get a vendor to do this or we go and buy a product? That's one we call alternate analysis. Reserve analysis. As a project manager, we need to work on this because there are two types of reserves. For the examination, please remember this, Rakhi. One is called contingency reserve, which is a part of your scope baseline or a cost baseline. Okay, contingency reserves are always a part of the baselines. Okay, so which is like you think that okay, this is a known unknown. You expect some issues can happen, so you have some reserve for that. You have some extra 2 weeks of buffer. Like for example, as I told you about the rains or the festival holidays, these are known unknowns, right? So these are all part of your baseline. Unknown unknowns is a management reserve. Unknown unknowns is like there is a skill issue, people are not able to work properly, or maybe there is a delay in approvals, or maybe there is a regulation issue. At that time, we have to reach out the management and get their support. That is called management reserve. So contingency reserve is known unknowns, management reserve is unknown unknowns. Okay. And again, let me repeat for PMP examination. Remember that the contingency reserves both for cost and schedule are a part of the scope baseline. Remember this. Okay. Next, let's go ahead. Decision making techniques. So now you've got estimates, you have to get decisions faster. So that like four decision making techniques. One is unanimity. Unanimity is like all 100% of people agree with the estimate. Majority is like 51% agrees, we go with the majority. Plurality is like you've got more people towards it. For example, uh, five people are there, three people are saying like say 40%, another they are saying like say 30%, another two saying like 30%, right? So we go with the 40% one, right? So that's the plurality. And then there's got a fist of five. Fist of five says that when you're going to do a kind of voting, so you open the fist and say if you say five, okay, means 100%. If the fist is closed, like no, I'm against this. So five being like 100%, closed fist being say no. So say two fingers like I'm like 40% lying towards what you're saying, right? So all these decision making techniques help you in making decisions faster, reach consensus, and keep the work moving forward. Okay. So finally, coming towards the outputs of estimate activity durations, we have got the estimates. We get the estimates on the activities. We get the reserves. The contingency reserves are there. We update the activity attributes, assumption logs, lessons learned register, and then we also update the basis of estimates. Like for example, how did we estimate? What were the assumptions? What were the constraints? What is the confidence level of estimators? So all these things are outputs of activity estimate duration. Okay. So in Agile, the outputs will give you, so what are the outputs we get in the Agile format, right? So we get a prioritized product backlog, we get the user stories with the estimates, we get the refined estimates, the core skin estimates, the release goal is clear, like what is going for this release, when the release needs to be done, and the release date. So these are the outputs we will expect in the Agile projects, right? So product backlog update is very important, release date, release goal is also very important. Finally, for your PMP, important point for PMP examination, when to use 1 point formula, when to use 3 point formula, you have to memorize this formula. Okay, you should know when to use 1 point, when to use 3 points. So 1 point is for faster, 3 point is for more detailed and more accurate. You have to memorize this formula. Then you have to remember the definitions of all the different types of estimating. I've given the examples over here. You need to know these for the examination. Then you should know agile estimating, the teacher sizing, planning broker, right? What is the advantage of these things? Should be knowing that, right? So in detail, you should know what is planning poker, how is it done. So these are the topics that are important for your PMP examination. Okay, so in the next video, we'll talk about how do we develop schedule. So what I would suggest you all is to maintain a learning book, buy a notebook titled as learning book. So let's learn about the PMP examination, make notes of all these things. So many PMP exam concepts have been sharing these tools and techniques. It's very, very important examinations to remember the tools and techniques more than the inputs and outputs. If you know just the final outputs of the process so that are happening, that's very good enough. But tools and techniques, you must know all the tools and techniques because you'll get a lot of questions on tools and techniques of PMP examination. Okay, so I would request buy a learning book. In this book, make a note of the processes, the tools and techniques you're talking about. On the last page, you go and make a note of the formulae. Many more formulas will be coming in this video. We saw like 4 formulae. I'll be sharing a lot of mind maps. Make those mind maps so it will be easier for you to learn about the topics of PMP examination. Thank you for watching my video. This is Arham Faraaz. In the next video, we will work on how to develop the schedule for PMP examination. Bye bye. Please do like, subscribe, share my videos, and comment on them. Bye bye.